Chapter 8 of Autistic Logistics. The Tantrum Rescue. Tantrum. Meltdown. Wig out. Episode. Fit. Whining. Winging. Crying. Epiphyt. The big T. Why are there so many words for one event? Everyone tantrums. It is not just a phenomenon for 2-year-olds. 10-year-olds, 13-year-olds, 18-year-olds, 30 and 40-year-olds, and even my 89-year-old granddad tantrums. Toddlers, teenagers, college students, politicians, celebrities, teachers, police officers. Everyone does it. If we think it will get us what we want, we will give it a good try. It can be a powerful tool and very bad. The appeal never seems to diminish. We even seem to like watching it on TV. It is modeled so frequently in our society that we have many names for this one event. One underlying belief that the Western world sells is I should get everything I want now. This supports and fuels the tantrum phenomenon. A lot of the time, our children on the spectrum use the tantrum just like anyone else, as a powerful tool to get what they want. However, not all of their crying is a tantrum. Unlike the rest of the population, there are significant times when what can look like a regular tantrum for our children is actually quite different. These are times when our child's crying, hitting, screaming, and shouting is actually one of the following: a direct result of sensory overload, a powerful heightened need for control and predictability, a shutdown of their coping mechanisms. There are 3 very real phenomena unique to autism that require our compassion and understanding. Some people refer to this as a meltdown. My colleague Ron Kaufman and I came up with a new term, a neurocrash. We believe it to be a better description of what is really going on and clearly differentiates it from a tantrum. Our children's sensory and neurological systems crash, and their coping mechanisms completely shut down. Once you can tell the difference between a tantrum and a neurocrash, there are things you can do and adjust to accommodate your child's different needs, which will make both your lives easier. As this book is about parenting our unique children on the spectrum, I'm going to address these neurocrashes first. The second part of the chapter will be dedicated to what to do when they're actually using the tantrum to get what they want. How do you know whether your child is crying, screaming, yelling, or hitting because they have a neurocrash or because they have a tantrum? They're having a tantrum. The answer often lies in the circumstances in which this behavior is happening. There are, in fact, quite clear possible neurocrash zones. A neurocrash zone is a time or event where neurocrashes are more likely to happen. Below is the list of the most common ones: outside the house, in the store, at a restaurant, at a party, at gatherings of 3 people or more, after a loud mechanical or regular sound. It could be the sound of a crying sibling, a thunderstorm, the lawnmower, a washing machine, blender, the TV or radio, a fan or air conditioner. Transitions, especially if hurried, after a long day of school or therapies, when their rituals or routine are disturbed, when they suddenly start crying seemingly out of the blue. Neurocrash from sensory overload. We've already talked about how our children experience the world differently. Chapter 1. This added stress that our child experiences can build up and exceed the levels that they are able to cope with. This results in a neurocrash, the body's way of trying to release some of the stress and anxiety that has built up during the everyday onslaught of the sensory bombardment that our children face. When I share this with parents, they sometimes say, but he does not always have a neural crash when he goes to the park. Sometimes he handles it just fine. So it can't be a sensory overload. Yes, that is true. It is not just about being in the park. There are other factors to consider. There's a sensory breaking point where our children hit a sensory wall, and that is where neurocrash happens. This is actually true for all of us. I know that I usually last only 2 hours at the mall before sensory fatigue kicks in. My eyes start to hurt from the lights. I begin to lose my ability to concentrate. Sounds begin to overwhelm me. I feel exhausted. If I push it longer, I can be known to get a little snippy with my mall companions, or I lose either my purse or keys. When I am aware that I am about to hit breaking point at a sensory wall, I can take action by going home, or taking a break in a quiet cafe, or sitting down on a bench and closing my eyes for a few minutes. Our children do not have that kind of control over their situation. They are not calling the shots. We are. They don't always find it easy to communicate what is going on. If they're able to say, I want to go home, our answer is often, in a minute or after X. When they start crying, we often assume it is because they are not getting what they want, when really they have just slammed into their sensory wall and are having a neural crash. Solutions. Reduce your child's stress and anxiety levels by reducing their exposure to sensory overload, which will then reduce the number of neural crashes they experience. Think of your child's schedule from a sensory point of view. Reduce it as much as you can in the following ways. Reduce the number of outings to places that have crowds of people and a high level of noise. As we talked about in Chapter 1, favor home as much as possible. Find what your child's sensory breaking point is and go home before they hit that wall. Go home at least 30 minutes before that might happen. Make sure your child has quiet times when no one is asking them to do something and the sensory stimulation is low. This could be a quiet space at school or at home. At home, schedule these quiet times into your timetable. It will be great for all of your kids. Allow your child to do their STEM-ism. The STEM-ism is actually your child's incredibly intelligent way to reduce sensory overload and regulate themselves. Do not try to stop this. Remember that there is such thing as too much therapy. Think about your child's day or week. How many hours of their day are they in different therapies where the focus of the therapy is on teaching and getting them to do something different from what they do and are right? How many hours of their day are they in different therapies where the focus of the therapy is on teaching and getting them to do and be something different from what they do and are right now? How many hours in a day or week do you think you could withstand constantly being asked to change? Somehow, when it comes to all our special children, we think more is better. That is not necessarily true. If your therapy is based around following your child's lead, respecting their stims and isms and their need to rest, and filled with sincere joyous play, centered around your child's motivations, then yes, the more is the better. But if not, consider less. This is about designing our child's lives so that they do not experience sensory overload and have neural crashes. This is in our control, not our children's control. If you do the things listed above, their neural crashes will decrease. Neural crash from powerfully heightened need from control and predictability. One consequence of having such a different sensory system is a heightened need for control and predictability, which can result in our children having frequent periods of inflexibility. To help further reduce our children's neural crashes, creating more predictability within our children's daily lives will greatly reduce their anxiety and stress. We can do that in the following ways. Respecting their rituals whenever possible. For our children on the spectrum, a common trait is that they can be inflexible and need some patterns, routines, and rituals to remain constant. When she was younger, my godchild Jade had a bedtime routine that needed to be executed in a certain order. When I was babysitting her, if I was to get the order wrong, for example, turn down her bed covers before I'd moved to her teddy bears, she would begin to cry, and there was really nothing I could do to soothe her. I always did my best to carry out the routine the way she wanted it. This was my way of showing her that I loved her, that I was user-friendly, and I could be trusted to give her control. You may have been told that you have to break up your child's rituals and add difference into your child's life in order to help them become more flexible. However, in my experience, this only makes your children more inflexible and controlling, and creates more neurocrashes. Giving control, creating predictability when our child are inflexible was the best way I know to help our children become more flexible. The time to introduce new things into our child's life is when they are being flexible. For more information on how to do this, read my book, The Autism Language Launcher. And then identifying and respecting yes-no contrary patterns. Yes-no contrary pattern is a term I have coined for when nothing seems to satisfy our children. When given exactly what they ask for, they suddenly want the opposite. For example, I was working with Mikey, a 6-year-old mid-verbal child on the spectrum. He brought me his sock and said, "Sock on." I praised him for bringing the sock to me and asking so wonderfully to put the sock on, and I immediately put the sock on. As soon as the sock was on, he asked me to take it off, which he did. We did this a number of times, and then he started to cry at the same time as telling me to take his sock off and on. This carried on for another 25 minutes before he stopped asking me to and kept his sock on. I've worked with numerous other children who do some versions of this yes-no contrary pattern. We could spend a lot of time theorizing about what he really wanted. Maybe there was a particular way he wanted me to put his sock on that I was not doing. Maybe he really wanted me to scratch his foot, but did not have the vocabulary for it. Both of these could be true. I do feel that, whatever the reason, it comes under the category of a neurocrash. It is an expression of our children's inflexibility, which is an expression of their autism, not a tantrum. In this situation, I would suggest that you give control and do what your child is asking until they work through this contrariness. In doing so, we show that we are user-friendly, someone who is useful to talk to and go to when they're feeling this way. Creating daily routines you can stick to. Think of your everyday routines, like getting your child up in the morning and off to school. Think about what you do after school, your child's bedtime routine, and create a sense of predictability and sameness to them. Chapter 12 goes into more detail about how to approach these times. Now we are going to move on to looking at what to do when our children are in fact using the tantrum to get what they want. What is the tantrum? I can see all the following behaviors as variations in the tantrum when they are used in response to our children not getting what they want. The full-blown grade A rockstar performance of yelling, screaming, falling to the ground, and throwing things. Crying. Shouting. Talking with an attitude, which means that they're talking in a bossy, demanding way. Their tone may be a little curt and slightly raised. Pouting and giving the silent treatment. Hitting the side of their own head repeatedly or biting the side of their hand by the thumb. Headbanging, crying and hating out, yelling and knocking things over or throwing things. When I use the word tantrum in this chapter, I am referring to all the behaviors above, and you can use the techniques described here in response to any one of them. Your child may do the actions above for a number of reasons. I would call any one of these behaviors a tantrum when they are used in response to our children not getting what they want. Why do our children use the tantrum in all its variations? The simple answer is that it works. It is our children's job to find out what will get them what they want in the quickest way. If your child is using the tantrum, then it is usually because it gets them the thing that they want quicker than anything else they might have tried. This is the case whatever level of language your child has, verbal or not verbal yet. I am sure you can all remember a time when you were busy cooking or doing some other important errand for your family. Your special child was either in the kitchen with you or in another room chatting to himself, maybe babbling away, or reciting a scene from a movie. You went about your cooking not paying attention to the language your child was producing, probably glad to be able to get on with your activity. Then suddenly he starts to scream or cry, and your parental antenna went up, and you rushed to his aid. Here, the unintentional message that you gave to your child was that screaming and crying are more useful than speaking to get mom and dad's attention. Another example is when you're doing your weekly shop. Your child wants you to open a bag of chocolate chip cookies so he can start eating them, and you give him 2 cookies. He wants more. Maybe he lets you know this by saying more cookies, or non-verbally, by putting the bag in your hand again. You say no. He tries again, and maybe even leans in and kisses you. You say no. He starts to cry and then begins to make a scene. He cries loudly. The other people around you start to stare, and so, in order to avoid this public scene, you give him another cookie. Anything to stop the staring. Here's the unintentional message you're giving your child is, if I cry, I will get what I want. It is more effective than any verbal or non-verbal communication. A further example is when you and your child are playing together, and he's being very, very interactive with you. How you love this beautiful time together. Then suddenly he stops and wants to play with your cell phone. Because you so love the interaction you were just having, you do not want him to. You want to keep playing with him. Your child is persistent, trying to reach for your cell phone, or verbally communicates. Play fun. You stick to your guns and say no. He starts to cry, and you still say no. Then after a few more minutes of crying, you start to feel that maybe you're mean and not giving him your cell phone. You think that you're making him sad, and you want him to think that you're a good parent. So you give him your cell phone. Again, the unintentional message you give your child is, crying will get me what I want. And that it is more effective than any verbal or nonverbal communication. I'm sure that most of us will relate to these statements and examples. Even if they are not exactly what happens in your daily life with your children, you will have your own similar version. While I am helping parents with their children's tantrums, some share with me that they do not experience themselves as giving their child what they want when they tantrum. Maybe as you are reading this, you are feeling that way too. However, in my experience, a child only continues to use the tantrum to get what they want because someone is responding to it. Maybe you do not respond to the tantrum 7 times out of 10, which is a high ratio. However, from your child's point of view, that means it still works. If you do not respond to their tantrums 3 times out of 10, it is worth using this tantrum method each time, because there is a chance that this is the time they will get what they want. Our children find it hard to express their wants verbally, so it makes good sense for them to use the tantrum, even if it only sometimes works. So really be honest with yourself about your response to the tantrum. It is not about being right or wrong. It is about understanding yourself and seeing clearly how you are responding to your child so that you can help them. Usually when parents really start to think about all the times their child have a tantrum, they can find examples of this when they did respond. You are not alone in this. I myself have had to work through my own feelings about the tantrum. Once I became more comfortable with the tantrum and did not feel the need to stop it, I was then able to help children find a more effective way to communicate. Once we know what we are doing, then we can begin to change. Change your thoughts, change your actions. The way to decrease our child's use of crying and a tantrum, which is to change the way we respond. It is about showing our children that it does not work anymore. In order to do that, it is important for us to identify why we are responding in the first place. Finding the reason helps us adopt a different thought pattern about the tantrum, which will help change our response to it. The first step is to identify how we are thinking and feeling when our children tantrum. The exercise below will help you do that. Ask yourself, what thoughts run through my mind when my child has a tantrum? Write down your first recollections, or wait until the next time your child has a tantrum and listen to the thoughts that run through your head. If you are having difficulty, use the list below. Just tick the ones that are relevant to you. Oh no, here we go again. I can't go through this again. I have no idea how to handle this. Why me? There has to be something I am doing wrong. I hate autism. I wish I lived elsewhere. Will he always be like this? I'm no good at this. What will the neighbors think? I hope the neighbors don't call the police. What will it be like if he does this at 18 years old? I'd rather be at work. I don't think he likes me. Next question. How do I feel emotionally when I first hear my child begin to tantrum? The list below is to help you. Just tick the ones that are relevant to you. Sad, annoyed, anxious, numb, helpless, panicked, bad, fed up, angry, frustrated, calm, furious. Next question. How does my body respond when my child tantrums? I tense my body. I start to hold my breath. My heart begins to race. I tense my jaw. I clench my teeth. I turn around or get up quickly. I start to sigh. My heart sinks. My eyes widen. My palms start to sweat. Now that you have identified some of your responses to your child's tantrum, you can see that it evokes powerful feelings and physical responses. It's no wonder we want to move fast and get our children to stop. Our children pick up on the rich mixture of our physical and emotional reactions and use them to their benefit. It is not a malicious act. It is their job to find the quickest route to getting what they want. They're just being children. All children have a sixth sense about their parents, and, as I've written earlier, our children are particularly sensitive, especially to our attitude. The next step is to become, as we call it in the Sunrise program, a happy detective. Find out the reason for your emotional responses. Then you can adopt a different perspective, one that will help you respond differently the next time your child tantrums. Below are some of the most common reasons why we respond to our children's tantrums. Maybe you relate to all of them, or maybe just a few or one in particular. If we are to help our children decrease their use of the tantrum, we must first change ourselves. This is not to say that your child's crying is your fault. We are not in control of our child's actions, but we are in control of how we respond to them. This is about taking control of the way we think so we can respond with clarity and purpose when our children tantrum. I just want it to stop. This is what our children are counting on. If they pick this up within us, they know that it is worth carrying on. Even if our children have to cry for an hour or more, if they feel that they will get what they want, it will be well worth it. Wouldn't you? If at the end someone was going to give you $1,000, would you not be happy to cry? When we want them to stop, we are more likely to give in and give them the thing they are crying for, thus reinforcing their belief that it works. Our society can put pressure on us to fix a child who is crying. I've often heard statements such as, "Where's that child's mother? Why is she not stopping that child from crying?" Or, "Will somebody, anybody, stop that terrible noise that child is making?" We ourselves just want a peaceful time. However, the more we respond to that tantrum, the fewer times we will have a peaceful outcome. Helping our children now with their tantrum by learning to be less responsive will help them to use another way of communicating. Next time your child cries, instead of thinking, "I just want to stop it," think, "My role is to help her understand that crying is not the most effective way to communicate." Practice this new thought to yourself as your child tantrums. It will help you stay the course and implement the techniques listed later in this chapter. I feel bad because I do not know why my child is crying. Why should you know? Crying is incredibly unclear. That's why it is helpful to show our children another way of communicating. Just because you are your parent does not mean you can translate their crying. It really is okay that you do not know. It does not mean that you are a bad parent. When you do not understand why your child is crying, the most important thing is to feel calm and comfortable. It is okay for your child to not be understood every now and then. They will not die from this. They're loved, well-fed, have a good home, and all is well. They and you will get through this, which evokes the wise saying, "This too will pass." When you're comfortable with not knowing why your child is crying, you will have more of your brain power available to try and figure out what it is they may be trying to communicate to you. Next time your child is crying and you do not understand how helpful that would be, "Even if I do not understand why my child is crying, I'm still a good parent." Staying comfortable with this thought will help me be available and stay calm for my child. I feel sorry for my child. He already has enough challenges with his autism. There's no doubt that our children have to work harder than neurotypical children and that they have a different set of challenges. However, our pity will not serve them. It will not help them move toward overcoming their challenges. Giving in to the pity means we may see our children as less capable, and from that point of view, we will tend to give them fewer opportunities to grow. When we give them opportunities, when we do not give them opportunities, how can they show us how capable they actually are? How can they grow? Pity can also cloud our eyes, so when we look at our children, we also only see their challenges, ignoring their strengths and all the amazing things they can do. I'm sure you can find examples where your child will seek out what they want with a powerful determination, as well as examples where they are happy in their own world, enjoying their stims and isms. When I am teaching groups of parents, I will ask them to raise their hand if they see their child as being happy while doing their stims isms. Each time, most, if not all, parents will raise their hands indicating yes. Indeed, that is also my experience. It seems that we are emotionally suffering more from our children's autism than they themselves. Next time your child cries, a change in thinking could be, thinking my child is weak and to be pitied will not serve him. My child is strong and capable and can deal with not getting what he wants. When my child cries, it means she is unhappy. My job is to help my child be happy all the time. It seems to make obvious sense that if a child cries, it means they are unhappy. But do we really know? If our child cannot tell us how they feel, who are we to imagine or assume to know how they feel? I can cry for many different reasons. I cry when I feel happy and grateful. I cry when I'm sad. I cry from relief. And I like to have a good cry during a sad movie. There are very medical benefits to crying. It oxygenates the brain and exercises the lungs. Do we know which one our child is doing? I'm not saying that I know your child is not unhappy. I'm just proposing that until the day comes when our child can express their feelings to us, we don't know. Most likely, our children are crying because it works, it gets a response, and there's no deep-seated unhappiness around it. You have probably noticed that your child can look very forlorn and grief-stricken when they are crying, and the moment they get their desired object, they instantly smile, happy as a lamb. If they had been truly unhappy, surely it would taken them longer to get over this powerful emotion. I've watched many a child cry, pleading with their parents to have such and such, while doing so, checking out their facial expressions in the mirror, making sure that their performance is picture perfect. When we are babies, we cry to alert our parents to change our diapers and feed us. It is the only way to communicate our needs, and it is a communication, not an expression of emotions. As we grow older, we start to be able to use verbal communication to get what we want, using crying less. But when our verbal or non-verbal communication doesn't work, for us, we resort to our old communication of crying. I often see adults respond to a crying toddler with, "Why are you so mad? Why are you so sad? What's making you unhappy?" Or, "Baby, come here. Let me make it all better for you." By doing this, we start to teach our children that not getting what they want in a moment means that they are unhappy. We actually make that connection for them. As a young child, I remember having an accident in the classroom. As I watched the puddle form on the floor beneath me, my teacher came up to me, put her arm around me and told me not to worry. She had a very concerned look on her face. She told me numerous times that I had done nothing wrong and that it was okay, that I was not to feel embarrassed or upset about this, as it was okay. She used the words embarrassed so many times that I came from the situation with the distinct feeling I should feel upset and embarrassed about this. I felt completely fine about this episode, but the next time I had an accident, I did feel embarrassed. I'd been taught the appropriate emotional reaction from a well-meaning teacher, and I'd been taught well. When my niece was 7 years old, she was throwing herself on the floor, crying and yelling, while informing her dad she was not going to bed. Her dad, getting more and more frustrated at his daughter's performance, left the room for a moment. I told my niece that her tantrum was not going to work. She stopped, turned toward me, and smiled sweetly. "Oh, it will, Dad. Just give me some more time." I love how our children will tell us the truth, and she was right. It took her 20 minutes, but in the end, her dad let her stay up another hour. Now it seems to me that as our child gets older, something changes. Between 7 and 10 years old, they know when they are putting on a performance. Then, as they get a little older, they begin to take on the beliefs that we in our world are selling them, and if we do not actually start to believe that it is not okay if they do not get what they want. By the time they are teenagers, they may well start to be generally unhappy about things not going their way, and they join the unhappy ranks of our society of adults. I would say that a large proportion of children are not unhappy, but are just communicating that they want something. But as I am not a mind reader, there is a real possibility that your child may be unhappy at times. So let's discuss this possibility a little. Why is it so bad if your child is unhappy? Why is it not okay for them to feel that way for a while? Our society has brainwashed us into thinking that our job as parents is to make our children happy and give them everything that they want. That if we do not, then we are somehow amiss. You cannot save your child from their own feelings of discomfort that they are going to feel as they grow. Think of your job as a parent as helping them know that they cannot necessarily control what the world brings them, but they can choose how they are going to feel about it. The way we are helping our children have a strong foundation for how to be when their life gets challenging. We can do this by modeling comfort and happiness when they're not feeling either. Our children look to us to find out how they should feel about something. If they are uncertain, they look to us to see if things are okay. For me, I feel anxious when there is turbulence on an airplane. When this happens, I look to the people who I feel are in charge and know about turbulence, the cabin crew. I look at their faces and try to determine whether or not they're anxious and unhappy about the situation. If they are, I know I am in big trouble. If they look calm and are going about their business in a normal way, I feel better taking the lead from them. Our role as a parent is not to make our children happy in every situation, but to be a supportive guide when helping them navigate life's challenges. If your child is uncertain, possibly unhappy about leaving them at school, eating a new food, the prospect of having their hair cut, or their inability to express their needs in a way another person understands, your comfort and happiness is going to be extremely important to them. When they turn to look at you and see that you are feeling comfortable about the situation, you communicate to them that all is well, and that the situation is not as bad as they thought it was. You give them something to move towards, thus helping them through a transition that will set them up for all the upcoming transitions they will have to make in life. If you feel uncomfortable and feel the need to save them from the situation, you rob them of the opportunity of learning how to cope and teach them, yes, indeed, this is something to be unhappy about. 2 beliefs that will be helpful to think about when your child next cries and tantrums are: I do not know how my child feels unless he tells me with his words. If my child is unhappy, then my comfort and happiness will be a great comfort to him and will help him move through the situation. Changing thoughts that are unhelpful and have become beliefs into new, more helpful thoughts can be understood as part of our ongoing program of training ourselves to develop new beliefs that will support our new approach to our children. These new beliefs will help you consistently implement the techniques described below. Techniques: what to do when our child tantrums. Below are the main techniques to use when your child tantrums. Check your attitude. This is one of the most important things to do when your child tantrums. If you are uncomfortable, they will know that their crying is working and that it is worthwhile carrying on. Engage one of the new thoughts outlined above that will help you feel more comfortable and easy when your child tantrums. This may take some time to practice and feel real, but just keep re-engaging the new thought until it becomes more familiar to you. It may be helpful to write out your new thoughts and put it up as on the wall in your house as a reminder, maybe on your bathroom mirror or another place you regularly look at. Slow down. When your child cries, you want them to get the message that their crying makes you act really slowly, and you become slightly less intelligent. When you always want to respond to them, showing them that you care and love them are interesting in them, do it at a much slower pace. I mean, a really, really slow pace. This changes the dynamics from tantrums work to tantrums make people slower and don't help me get what I want. As you move really slowly to their tantrum, start moving faster to their verbal and nonverbal communications. Do that at all times, not just around the times when they tantrum. This will give them a very important contrast that will help them understand that if they want something, the fastest way to get it is to use their words or nonverbal communication. You want them to see that the dynamic has changed. You now move very, very slowly when they tantrum and become very fast and useful when they communicate by using their sounds, words, and nonverbal communication. If you do this, your child will notice. They will shift to the more effective communication. Explain. Tell them you don't understand them when they cry, that you want to be helpful, but it's just that you don't know what they want. That when they cry and shout, it makes it harder for you to know what they're saying. Express this in a calm, relaxed voice, even if your child is yelling or crying loudly. Give reasons. Tell them why you cannot give them the thing they are using the tantrum for. Let them know that the food they want is unhealthy for them, and you want them to feel good in their bodies so that they can be well enough to play. Or that it is the middle of the night and everyone is sleeping, and that you want everyone to sleep so that they are rested for all the fun they will have the next day. Let them know that you do not have enough money to buy a new toy, but when they get home, they can play with all the toys they have at home. You want them to know the reasons why you are not giving them something, so that they can see you are caring for and doing your best, not punishing them. Give them another way to communicate. Let them know what they could do to help you understand. They could use their words or show you physically by taking you by the hand and showing you or looking at the thing they want. Give them an alternative. I would suggest you do this when your child is crying because they want something that either you cannot give them or do not want to give them. For example, if your child wants another cookie, you could offer an apple. If they want that particular stuffed animal that you do not have, offer them a different stuffed animal. This way we are still showing our children that we are useful and trying to be helpful. We also modeled to them that even if they do not get exactly what they want, there are better options that could be fun as well. Be lovingly persistent. Keep doing all of the above. You may have to do these things when your child tantrums a bunch of times before they really get that you have changed the way you respond. Don't forget that you've been responding a certain way for the whole of your child's life. It may take them a while to realize that you have changed. Keep persisting and showing your child that things have changed and you are no longer responding. When they are convinced you have changed, they will change. The time it takes to convince your children will vary from child to child, and all you have to do is keep putting into practice the techniques above. Take your attention and energy completely off your child's tantrum. At times when your child is persistent in using the tantrum to get what they want, the most useful thing to do is completely take away any ounce of attention you have focused on your child. This means stopping any explaining of what they cannot have what they want, or actually moving away and doing something completely different. Sometimes if your direct attention is still on your tantruming child, they take that as a cue to carry on with the tantrum. If they still have your attention, it may still work. Moving your attention off your child onto something else gives them a clear signal to your child that you're okay with them crying and you're not trying to stop them. You really are not going to give them the thing they're tantruming about. I was working with a great and fabulous dad of two children on the spectrum. His daughter was really good at tantruming to get what she wanted. She was really persistent. She had stopped tantruming with her whole team except her dad. The one thing he had not done yet was to take his attention completely away from her once he had explained why she was not getting what she wanted and offered an alternative which he had refused. He had confided in me that he thought it would look as if he did not care about her if he did that. We discussed this together, and he decided that if he looked at the bigger picture of his incredibly loving parenting of her, this would probably not be the case. The very next day, he applied this technique with his daughter and filmed it for me. He was amazed. The moment he turned his back and went to play with something else, she stopped crying. Instantly stopped crying. When he heard this, he turned again toward her, and she immediately started again. He turned away again, she immediately stopped. This happened several times. 2 days later, after he had applied this technique, his daughter stopped tantruming to get what she wanted with him as well. There are different reasons and circumstances for our children using the tantrum. In each circumstance, we would use a different combination of the techniques listed above. The following examples illustrate which combination of techniques to use. Example: how to respond when your child uses the tantrum to ask for something you do not want to give them. I was working with Maggie, a delightful 8-year-old girl on the spectrum. We were about 45 minutes into the session when she decided she wanted to leave the house. Here is what happened. She went to the front door and tried to open it. Now, I wanted us to stay in the house so we could have a focused session without all the distractions and the obvious dangers of the roads and cars. So I knew that I was not going to open the front door and let her out. I explained to her that we were going to stay inside until our session ended at 5 p.m. I let her know that she could ask her mom when she returned if she could go outside, but for now we would be staying inside. I asked her to let me know what she wanted to do outside and said that I would try to play with her inside. On hearing this, she started to cry and put my hand on the doorknob. I first checked in with my attitude and chose to feel comfortable and easy with her about the tantrum. I made sure that all my movements were slow so that she could see that her tantrum did not make me move fast, but actually made my actions slower, a little confused. She cried, I explained. I will not open the door, even if you cry. It is important that we stay inside so we can play together and not have to be distracted by all the cars, people, and things outside. Maybe your mom will take you out later, at 5 o'clock. She then cried even louder and threw herself on the floor, kicking her legs and thrusting her arms around me. As she did this, she looked straight at me, watching to see what I would do. In response, I said to her, even if you throw yourself on the floor and scream, we are not going outside. As I said these things, I was feeling very loving and kind toward her. I was smiling and talking in a calm, loving voice. She looked at me and then picked up the stool and started to throw it at her. I caught it easily and said to her, even if you throw things, the door will stay closed and we will not be playing outside. After I said this, Maggie, still crying, went into the bathroom and turned on the taps, rustled the shower curtain, knocked over the garbage can, and threw the toilet paper into the toilet. She then came out and looked at me. I said to her, even if you knock things over and make a mess, the door will remain closed. Stay inside. She left her biggest card to last. She took off her clothes, banged her chest, and looked at me defiantly with her hands on her hips, as if to say, now what are you going to do? Even if you take off all your clothes, the door will remain closed and we will be staying inside. After this explanation, she stopped crying and with my help put her clothes back on. None of her usual tricks had worked on me, so she went back to playing. It did not take her any time to transition from her tantrum to playing. Once she realized that I was not moved by her tantrum, she completely stopped and played mentally as she had done before. Wasn't Maggie so clever in what she chose to do to try and get me to open the door? I often marvel at her children's intelligence and understanding of how to motivate the people around them. That's why it is so important that we change how we react, instead of focusing on changing our child's reaction. It may take your child some time to really believe that that you will no longer respond to their tantrums, that their tantrum will not change the situation. But if you can be lovingly persistent with this approach, they will eventually get it. By changing this way, you will also be teaching them something else. Sometimes you do not get what you want, and that is okay. Your child could use the tantrum to try and get a number of different things you either do not have or do not want to give them. It could be anything, such as a food you do not want them to eat, a toy that you do not want to buy for them, a toy that you cannot find, a device when it is 12 o'clock at night, a walk outside but it is raining, a drive in the car when it is bedtime, a trip to McDonald's or another store when you do not want to go. On the lines provided below, write down what it is that your child uses the tantrum for that you either cannot or do not want to give them.